Good morning. Thanks for joining this third of four webinars, sharing lessons learned from the field, from real world deep decarbonization retrofits. I'm Dave Hodgins. I'll be facilitating, but we will be really hearing today from Adalia Rodriguez with East LA Community Corporation, who has been leading the charge to decarbonize ELACC's portfolio. She has learned a ton through this process, so it's going to be a fun conversation. Tenant engagement, right, is the key. Before, during, after the projects, we're working in people's homes, right, and trying to avoid as much disruption as possible. I think any of us who have been through any sort of, home project realize how inconvenient that could be. And so this human aspect is so core to this work, and ELAC has just done a phenomenal job of it. So I think you're really going to enjoy the conversation. So a little background and context on Retrofit LA. How did we get here? Why tenant engagement matters. Building your team and your plan. I think this is something we've emphasized throughout this series is this measure twice, cut once, plan, 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 engage your team, communicate. As I said, pre-construction, during construction, and post-construction engagement. And what are some lessons that she's learned that we think are really important to share with the broader community. And we'll try to save time for questions. So as I said, I'm Dave Hodgins with Sustento, so I'll be facilitating. We are the program manager for Retrofit LA. And the fun part of my job is really trying to see what are the best practices, what are the challenges, like how do each of these projects fit into the system that we're trying to build and the market we're trying to build, and what's generalizable from what we're learning that's important to share. So quick poll. Who do we have here today? And Danny will put this up. Helps us understand, how you're coming to this work, and also who we're reaching as we promote these webinars. Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got some capacity builders, shall we say, today. Excellent. Next slide, please. So why does this matter in context? A lot of us have been working on decarbonization for a long time, or affordable housing for a long time. Now, or climate, more broadly, now all of this is intersecting, right? Housing affordability, aging buildings, extreme heat, air pollution, all of these issues are interconnected. And affordable housing is really the nexus if we're looking at leverage points to really make a difference in helping communities, the lives of people, and also trying to do something for the planet and future generations. And so all of this is connected, and you'll hear about that today and in other channels, other content that we're putting out. Decarbonization as a component of a comprehensive affordable housing preservation strategy, making this very relevant and salient for people today where all of this stuff is in play. All of this is part of a field guide where we're now looking back at a solid handful, growing number of completed projects that ELACC and our other cohort members, Little Tokyo Service Center and Esperanza Community Housing, have completed. They were first in line for a lot of these incentive programs that are now operating. Adalia was the first to close a dedicated financing facility, which we highlighted in the last webinar. And we've learned a lot through this process. So we're documenting this into a field guide and putting that out in pieces as we do these webinars. Our first one focused on getting started, that planning, like I said, measure twice, cut once. really steps 1 through 4. Then we focused in our last webinar on funding strategy, and you see that funding question is number 2, right? What's the decision process? What are the resources we have available? If we need financing, what kind of terms would work for us, and what would be our decision process, and where would we go for that? So that you're ready and that planning is done when you get to step 8, which is financing. So really engaging tenants runs throughout this process. Once you get to the part of selecting properties, and Adalia will go into that, what they've done, what's worked, what have been challenges, before, during, and now post-construction. So I'd now like to introduce Adalia Rodriguez. She is the VP of Human Capital and the Chief Operating Officer at East LA Community Corporation, and really a fearless leader in this space. So Adalia, thank you for making time. And I know you're on spring break this week, so that really speaks to how much you are putting into this work. So thanks for making time today.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. I've been with ELACC for several years now, and I'm excited to be working on this decarbonization work and sharing with you all what we've learned. Today, like Dave shared, I'll present some of our best practices on tenant engagement, but I welcome anyone as you're hearing to also provide input in the comments or offer any suggestions, and of course, welcome any questions that you may have. Next slide, please. All right, so the big question is, why does tenant engagement matter? Um, I'm not going to be reading the slides directly for you throughout the presentation, but there's a lot of content that you can take after. But the reason why this matters is because we are going into people's homes. Most of the time, we make the decisions of the improvements that we're going to make, the timeline that we're going to make it, and we're informing them. And yes, keeping our tenants informed is key to having a smooth project, everybody understanding the goals, getting their cooperation. But we also want them to know that we care and that we acknowledge that we're coming into their home during a period that will cause some disruption, and we want them to participate with us through this process. The next slide, please. A really big part of tenant engagement does mean assembling the right team. As affordable housing owners, our population varies. We have general affordable low income homes, but we have those that are, more vulnerable populations. So the bigger team that can support throughout this process of keeping our tenants informed and helping them manage the construction schedule, that's the team that you want to build. And what we've learned for ELAC that makes up the supportive services team, the property management team, the project manager, the one that's leading the decarb work, and the construction manager. All of these people play a role in keeping communication moving throughout the process. The supportive service team understands their residents' needs, knows those tenants that you might need to engage earlier on, or you might have to work more closely with to get their home ready for construction. The property manager is the one that manages the day-to-day communication, sends out those 24-hour notices, also can be the point person to serve as the person that the tenants go to on a regular basis. Usually there's like a trust built with property managers, so they'll go to the property manager first. Then you have your project manager that is managing the construction. Project manager's role is really to be the liaison between everyone, make sure they understand the technical details of what's going to happen. So if you're going to go into a space and do the mini split change, the project manager understands that process, can communicate that well to all the parties, and can also make sure that property manager knows whether there's a water shut off or not, so that then that can get communicated to the tenants. And then, of course, your construction manager, they need to build trust with your tenants because their team is the team that's going to be going into the homes. Their team is the one that the tenants will see on a daily basis as the work is progressing. There's so much when it comes to having a solid team, but each of those team members really needs to commit and understand their role in making this a success. Um, One of the key things when understanding your population is also understanding their accessibility needs, their preferred ways of communicating, any various languages that you're going to need because your team, if you have a high majority of Spanish speakers within your portfolio, you'll need to make sure that your engagement team can also speak the same language as your population. And when you start your engagement team, it's really good to lay out the roles and responsibilities early on as you're building your engagement plan. Next slide, please. There's three phases to construction that we like to think about at ELAC. There's the pre-construction, during construction, and post-construction. And each of these phases needs a solid engagement plan with goals tied to it. In the next slide, I'll share with you a little bit of what we thought about were the key points for each of those phases. Next slide. So here's some key components when you're building your engagement plan. Understand your tenant population, communicate with their tenants, their rights. As affordable housing owners, we always need to make sure that our tenants understand their rights. I know that it can feel a little bit challenging, that you might be giving them a little bit too much information, but you're actually building trust when you're letting them know what their rights are throughout this process. You do need to create a schedule and you need to ask your tenants, what is the best way for me to communicate with you? Do you prefer handouts? Do you prefer a phone call? Do you prefer one-on-one meetings? What is that best way for us? Do you prefer text messages? In all honesty, for ELAC, it's a variety. We've used text messages, we've used in-person meetings, we've used phone calls. It's a variety because your population is going to have different preferences. You do want to survey your population to make sure that you're actually addressing their concerns. And it can be short surveys after a meeting, or it can be engaging a third party to do surveys throughout the process where they can provide more honest feedback to a third party. You can decide. At ELAC, we did partner with UC Berkeley to provide pre and post surveys, and we're still waiting to collect that data, but it has helped inform different components of our engagement. You do need to consider if interpretation is necessary at your meetings. It has been necessary for ELAC's meetings, so whenever we're planning these events or the materials, we have them in two languages. It's either English and Spanish for our population. And then when we prepare the presentation handouts, we try not to use words that are very confusing for our population. So if we're going to say decarbonization, we're going to define it. And if it still doesn't make sense, we're going to use something that does make sense, all electric or a more efficient tool, whatever makes sense to your population. And you'll gather that if you're having more thoughtful meetings where there's a lot of engagement happening back and forth. You're asking them questions as you're presenting. Pay attention to the readability. I just shared that, and that the language is clear. And also, once you deploy your new equipment, make sure that you're providing training on how to use that equipment. Next slide, please. Here's some examples of communication materials that we've put together. We like to put together a welcome packet. It's really just an overview of the project, helps them understand why we've engaged in this effort, what decarbonization means to ELACC, how it aligns with local, city, county goals, but also state goals. Um, and then we also like to address some common questions that we're typically asked. A lot of times we're asked, why is this happening? How is this going to improve my living conditions? Um, am I going to be paying more? There's a lot of typical questions that we're asked, and we'll put those on our packets. One of the other things that we've done is induction cooktops from the surveys that we've done. Induction cooktops seems to be one of those areas where most of our population is concerned because they're used to cooking on gas stoves. So what we've done is we've partnered with a local chef in our community and held kitchen classes on our sites to get our population more comfortable with using induction cooktops. So not only are they learning to cook healthy meals, but they're also learning how to use induction cooktops. And then we'll also have newsletters or weekly updates. We tend to have meetings with food. It brings people out to the space and enjoy a meal and socialize amongst each other, but also socialize with us. Um, so there's definitely the in-person, but at each in-person meeting, there's materials that are handed out that can then go to those that were unable to attend. Next slide, please. Let's let's talk a little bit about the pre-construction engagement plan. The purpose of pre-construction meetings is really to highlight why you're getting engaged in this. I recommend that you begin pre-construction meetings about 2 months before you're going to start construction. And the minimum amount of meetings you should have in this period is 2 meetings. The first meeting should be your project overview. It should highlight an overview of what the retrofit will be in their building and why their building was selected. Again, you highlight their rights as tenants and their protections that they have. You inform them on what decarbonization is and the energy upgrades that they anticipate they'll be seeing. Um, they will ask, will there be an improvement in their utility bills? If you're working with AEA like we did, a lot of the analysis that's done before construction, when you're identifying your scope of work, it'll demonstrate to you if there's some anticipated improvements or benefits to that building, and you can pull that data and use it as to whether you anticipate utility improvements or not. Most of the time, if you're going all electric, you will be eliminating their gas bill. You may not entirely decrease the electric bill, but you will likely eliminate the gas bill. And then you want to ask your tenants, this is the meeting where you want to ask them, what is your preferred method of communication? Are you okay with us sending text messages? If so, you'll want to start gathering all of that information at that meeting. And then if they prefer newsletters, meetings, flyers, all of that, you want to gather that at that meeting. Next slide, please. The second pre-construction meeting that we highly recommend is construction. Meeting number two is construction preparation meeting. This is the meeting where you will bring in your contractor for the first time and let them meet the contractor. You'll give them an overview of the construction timeline. You'll start to explain to them what to expect during construction, how to prepare their home for construction. And then you'll also let them ask the contractor questions that they may have. This really helps build that communication between tenant, contractor, property manager, because property manager should also be present at this meeting. And property manager will start to hear some of the concerns that the tenants have and remind throughout the process to the rest of the team. Um, Areas to be considerate of that were first raised at this meeting. But the contractor knows the technical details of what happens when you're installing heat pump water heaters or what happens when you're doing mini splits. They can say it's usually, 3 days of a process. The first step is to go into your home and do this. And that's the comfort, and that's why the contractor should be present. They can really talk that through. And then once you get into that phase of rehab, then you present to them the process, and they've already heard it once, and it makes it for a much smoother process. Next slide, please. All right, so now we have a poll. Our first poll question is, based on what you've learned so far, why does tenant engagement matter? Awesome. 100%.
This
Everyone got all the questions.
this is a bright group.
It is a bright group. Yes, tenant engagement matters because we want to keep our residents informed. We want them to understand the goals of the project. We want to encourage participation and cooperation throughout construction. And we want to keep a space for feedback and questions. Thank you, everybody. Next slide, please. All right, during construction. During construction, if you're working on these decarb for us, has been somewhere between 6 to 12 months. So the number of meetings in this period will vary. You can hold monthly meetings. We've been holding bi-monthly meetings. It's up to you, and it really depends on the deep need of engagement that you want to have with your tenants. For us, bi-monthly has worked out just fine, but these meetings are used to provide construction updates, address any questions or concerns, gather feedback from our residents, and provide training on newly installed equipment. We've also used this space to allow our tenants to share their own experience with what happened through an install. So for example, if you have a very large building and you're working in different phases, like you're getting your mini splits done on, the bottom floors before you move up to the first floors and then the top floors. And then while the mini splits are being installed on the bottom floors, the heat pumps are being installed on the top floors. So during these tenant meetings, those tenants from those various floors can tell each other what their experience was. And that's actually worked out very well for us. We've had our tenants share what the process was like, how the new equipment is running, um, just to provide other areas of concerns or feedback so that we can address issues if they're happening early on. Um, as I shared earlier, you do want to bring demonstrations of the new equipment. For us, that was the induction cooktops was the key point. But we've also learned lately that doing a lot more one-on-one training on the smart thermostats and how to efficiently run mini split systems has become very important. So we've learned that recently. So we're going back and doing more detailed trainings on the mini split systems. Next slide, please. So I know this says new technology training, and this is heat pumps are new for us as a landlord, but the heat pump systems have been around for many years, and they've become so much more efficient. I added this slide here because I really want to highlight that this is the type of equipment that we have been installing for our water heaters and our mini splits inside of our units. Um, Kamar is here because Kamar is one of the incentives that pays the biggest chunk of our decarb work. And the switch is on is another portal that people can use to be able to layer incentives for single family homes or just smaller projects. Within our portfolio, we have a very small project, 3 units that doesn't qualify for the Kamar program. So there's other opportunities. But heat pump systems, can both heat and cool your home. They can work in reverse. They suck air from the environment. So they'll bring in some hot air and it'll produce cool air. They're very efficient systems. They work 3 times more efficient than your current AC system. So when we talk about moving to all electric systems, doesn't necessarily mean that your electric bills are going to be higher. It means that your electric system that you're installing is going to be much more efficient. Next slide, please. Our post-construction meetings are just as important as pre and during. Don't let these slide. Post-construction allows you to thank your tenants for their cooperation through this process. It is a lot to be in somebody's home for 9 to 12 month period. It can sometimes feel endless. So you really want to thank them for their time. You also want to make sure that the equipment is performing as you had intended. This is the opportunity to talk with them about how well the system is working. Are they experiencing any challenges? Is there any further training that they would need? Again, this is where you can do a little bit more one-on-one, hands-on training inside a unit with a home with one of your tenants because the systems are already there and you can re-educate them on the proper use of the equipment that we've recently installed. And you can also share with them some utility assistance or bill discount programs. There's some available with SoCal Gas, well, if they still have a gas system, or Edison or LADWP. Um, and then, of course, you can also engage your property manager and team to make sure that maintenance understands how to maintain these systems and also how to address any concerns of the tenants. And then finally, it just gives you that loop to gather shared stories or experiences so that it can inform your other projects. Next slide, please. So we've covered pre, during, and post, but there's still some lessons learned that I wanted to make sure everybody walked away with that stood out to us. So the tenant engagement team must maintain consistent communication and coordination internally amongst themselves, so that the information that that engagement team provides to the tenants is clear and consistent and accurate. Um, you also want to make sure that residents should be prepared for the possibility that the construction schedule or technologies might change. Um, we've experienced this for multiple projects, but the equipment that you anticipate to put into your space for some reason may be delayed or may need to change, and you just want to make sure that tenants understand that there can still be changes even after you've presented a schedule to them or the type of equipment they'll get. It's also important to let them know that there will be multiple inspections throughout the project. Our projects were funded with 4 different incentive programs, and each of those required an inspection. Not only did those require an inspection, but we also had to do the building and safety inspections. So there's just so many inspections that happen throughout this process. And finally, I think it's important to track your tenant engagement. Who's attending the meetings? What concerns have they raised? And make sure that you're following up with all of those concerns, and closing that loop. You will notice that there will be tenants that do not come to any of these meetings throughout the process if you're keeping attendance. So it's even more important that you know who's attending and who's not, so you can coordinate another way of communicating with them, more one-on-one, something just to make sure that you're still engaging with those tenants. And again, strong communication and transparency helps build trust and makes for a smoother process for everyone. Next slide, please. And we're here at our next poll, and the next poll is what's worked best for boosting tenant engagement at your property?
Or at your client's properties if you're in a consulting or contracting role. Just as you see this question, what's worked best in your experience? Yeah. Interesting. A good broad mix. It's like in-person events with and incentives and rewards seem to have worked best, and that sounds consistent with what you were saying, Adalia, is do events and have food
Yeah.
uh, as an incentive.
Yep. Next slide, please. Yep. It you're going to need a variety to be successful. Thank you. All right, so I've ended the tenant engagement piece, but I wanted to highlight how that played out on the success of one of our projects. Um, when ELACC first started this work, ooh, 3 years ago, 3 years ago, we knew nothing about decarb. We just knew that it was during COVID. Our tenants were being forced to be in their homes. We had some of them did not have cooling systems, and then there was so much incentive money available for um, improving our buildings. So, what we did in order to be successful to start in this work is we needed to have organizational buy-in. We needed leadership to be open to doing this work. We needed to make sure that the team leading this work had the capacity to lead it. At ELAC, that meant our asset and property management teams, because our real estate development team was working on new construction projects. We also hired a summer intern from Occidental College that was able to work full time to help us get organized. And we created a central filing system. So all of our work stayed organized as we were evolving. The next thing we needed to do was identify which projects we wanted to work on and then submit for our incentive applications to Kamar. Submitting your property for Kamar is actually a very easy process. If you still are unsure how to get started or which properties you want to work on, submit multiple projects into the Kamar incentive interest form. We have our almost our entire portfolio in that form. And as you're going through, you can start to decide which project to prioritize. But that is a simple, easy first step to get you started. And then just, of course, create some kind of action plan or structure in place to meet milestones throughout the year. Next slide, please. Our original goals was to leverage existing resources to improve our tenants' home. We wanted strategies that would help stabilize our buildings. Um, the operations of a building is just getting much more difficult to keep healthy. A lot of us are running on negative cash flow, so we needed ways to help stabilize it. This offers one of those opportunities. And we also wanted to benefit from the existing TA that was available. There's a lot of technical assistance out there available to support us to do these all electric buildings or to convert our existing portfolios into energy efficient all electric buildings. For us to be successful, we did have to partner with groups. We had to partner with Association for Energy Affordability. There are technology experts. And of course, we're working with the Retrofit LA partners. That would be the Sesento Group, Dave and his team, Esperanza Community Housing, and then Little Tokyo Service Center. Next slide, please. This is the case study, Vallejo. This is a 100-year-old building. It's a NOAA property that ELACC acquired in 2017. Many of those tenants had been living in the building for a long time. They had deferred maintenance for a long time. There's two buildings on this property. One was built in 1905, one was built in 1916. This is actually one of our tenants in one of those units. It's 17 units. It had had no major rehab, and all units are occupied. We manage our rehab as occupied rehab. We do not relocate our tenants because we don't have the funding to relocate them. And it took us about a year in planning before we actually started construction. So we started planning this project in August 2022 and finalized and approved our scope of work in August 2023. You can see our approved scope of work. This building is converting to all electric. There'll be low flow aerators and shower heads, LED lighting, mini split systems. This building had no AC systems. Then we have a central heat pump water heater. We added new windows. Through the process, we learned when adding the new windows that this is a historic building. Complicated it a little bit, but not impossible. We added induction cooking. We added exterior insulation. We are painting the exterior, and we needed to do a full electrical upgrade. This is a lot of work over a 12-month period where we were in and out of our tenants' homes. We picked this property because it has been underperforming for us annually. It would be very tough for us to keep this building affordable if we didn't find ways to stabilize it. The annual savings of utilities is not too much. It's only $700. It could and it will improve once we install solar panels on this building. But this is where we are now. The equipment, in planning your decarb, you do need to take take a look at how long it will take your equipment to arrive. Our water heater took 2 months, our HVAC 1 month, and the electrical equipment was a 6 month delay. Um, Construction started, it's been 12 months. We are finishing it up right now. And it started in April 2025. We're about 95% complete. And as we were going through this process, we had an unexpected requirement by the city that required that we repipe the entire building, hot and cold water. Um, and they would not budge. That was an increase of $130,000 of funding that we did not have. We were able to raise grant money for that. But throughout this process so far, we did have to submit a tenant habitability plan, present that to our tenants. And I believe we've already had 6 meetings at this point. When I wrote these slides, it was five, but we've had 5 to 6 meetings so far. Next slide, please. And this is how the Vallejo project has been funded. Um, you'll see there's 4 incentive programs. There's a group of grants and a small bit of replacement reserves. Um, The way that we plan our decarb work is that we size our scope of work to incentives. We don't have excess cash to pay out as part of this rehab, and we also don't want to pass any of the costs on to our tenants. So we will downsize the scope of work so that we almost have 100% coverage of incentives. Um, and this building was way out of, it's a 100-year-old building. It was way out of current building code. So it did require a significant amount of work to bring it to current building and safety standards. When we first acquired this property, it had major deferred maintenance, and the construction that was done on it prior to us owning it was substandard. Um, ELAC uses the help of AEA's technical assistance team to stack all of these various incentives. Our original budget was 800,000. Our cost increased 22% during construction, and this was about $140,000 from unexpected corrections that came with building and safety's reviews. This is a 100-year-old building. It can open. Wait, once you tear down the walls, it's a can of worms. You're at the risk of building and safety. But this building is one of the examples where, as affordable housing owners, our mission and our goal is to that our tenants deserve healthy, well-maintained homes, and this is directly meeting that mission. Next slide, please. And that's it. I welcome any questions.
Really fantastic preservation, Adalia. I haven't heard you talk through this before, and it was just really powerful to just reflect on the last 3 years and everything that you've done and done so well. And reflected here is just really a testament to your leadership. So um, kudos on this. If anyone does have any questions, now is your chance. You have Adalia live.
Thank you,
I,
Dave.
I have one question from Danielle Macus. Was any financing part of the capital stack, or was it all grants, rebates, plus reserves?
That's a really great question. Yes, there was financing part of the capital stack. We ELAC took out I think there might be some saved slides from a prior presentation, but ELAC took essentially out a line of credit of about $3 million that we can use as a bridge loan for each of our projects. So, when we started construction on this project, incentives don't get paid out until you've successfully completed the work. So you need some source to pay the contractor as they're submitting their draws, and that was the financing. The way that we paid our financing was the one-time cost of origination was paid at the time we secured the loan, and then we pay our loan interest as we draw down for our projects. And we were able to secure a grant to pay loan interest for this project and one of our other projects. Did that answer your question?
Great, and
And
that's right.
then,
This is the same structure that we highlighted in the last webinar, which were everything has to have a clever acronym so it sticks, but we're calling it the retro fund, right? It's retrofits that we're funding, and it's a revolving energy transition and resilience fund. So yeah, thank you for that question.
and then another question. What was the main challenge did you face during this process?
Ooh, that's a great challenge. I'll share Vallejo is that we were ready to be done with Vallejo after we completed it. We're at our final inspections when building and safety required that we repipe the entire building. And because we don't just have $100,000 somewhere to do this work, we had to start submitting grant applications, which really put our project on hold for about a 3 month period. Then, fortunately, we got the grant. We were able to restart and kick off and finish this. But throughout that process, the tenants, kept asking, when is this going to be done? We're ready for this to be done. And we just had to help them understand what was happening. And the benefit of repiping the building was going to improve the water pressure that they got. And so it was a big improvement for them, and we were able to get them in, but it just really took a lot longer for us during construction.
Great. And then one more question. Have you determined how electrification affected tenants' energy burden, assuming they paid for their own gas and electricity?
We're still waiting on the data from UC Berkeley, but in our tenant meetings, we've only had a couple of tenants share that their utility bills went up. Um, and we think that's primarily because they're not using the system as efficient as it should. So rather than letting their mini split system run at at 75 degrees, they're turning it off and on just like their old AC system, which is drawing down more power. So in general, the utility bills are performing the way that we projected, or at least we think they are, and we'll see that data more closely. But we have not been receiving a lot of complaints about utility increases.
Okay, great. And then that attendee asked a further question. Many existing older affordable housing communities never had AC cooling. Yeah, and that can be a significant energy cost increase for tenants. And then he asked, who was your partner at UC Berkeley?
Ooh, I don't have the name Yayeli. I don't have her full last name. I just have her first name.
Yeah, maybe we can follow up on that. I think that came through AEA, if I'm not mistaken, the introduction. But
Yes.
just to comment on that point, that's a really important point. And I just read that we had 326 record high temperatures across the country over the weekend, all in the same day. So this is a huge issue everywhere. And so now, those of us that have been in this space for a while started out, we're going to avoid climate change. It's going to be, energy efficiency. And now it's adaptation and mitigation. And so this is an example of that. And I think it's a messaging point too. Adalia talked a lot about engaging with tenants, residents about managing their expectations, like what are we doing and why and what can you expect to happen, and utility bills are part of that. But this is a quality of life question. And we as people spend money on things that we think make our lives better, keep us going, and having cooling in this weather when you didn't have it before does have value, right? It's not just a cost. Um, Now, for somebody who's paycheck to paycheck and where utility bills are forcing like really hard trade-offs, right? Definitely sensitive to that, right? And that's a real thing. Um, so this is a sort of an emerging, right, important conversation. And where could other funding sources come from? We hear a lot in elections about healthcare costs, right? And extreme heat is a killer. It's the top public health issue in Los Angeles and probably in other places too. I know the most about LA. And so, if we think about it that way, we're reducing risk of heat stroke, which can have lifelong consequences if that happens. It also makes indoor air quality worse. There's a compounding effect there with respect to all the respiratory issues and stuff that come with that. So yes, there can be an increase in bills if there wasn't cooling there before, but there's also benefits. And so that's an area of research that we're very plugged into. And if that's something that folks are interested in, we'd welcome follow up because it's super, super important.
And we have one more question. What was the experience like of getting buy-in from leadership? Did you do your portfolio-wide planning with a consultant or in-house?
For ELAC, it was a little bit unique because I am an executive member of the team. It was a little bit easier to get the buy-in, but when it came to uh, getting the rest of the team to move with me, it took, it's not that it was difficult, it took a lot of education around the vision of what we wanted to see with this work and also doing some annual action planning. So for ELAC, I started at the board level, introduced it to the board, then I introduced to the rest of the team. And then when we were ready, organized a small group of staff. Most of the staff, their role was really only to provide input, give us the material that we needed. It was the Occidental College intern that spent most of the time doing this for us. And so the capacity that we devoted in the beginning wasn't intensive, and and when we were able to get so many people involved, it became kind of a process within the organization.
And then I think we have time for one more question. Will CAMR cover PV to offset tenants' increased electricity costs?
Yes, we haven't installed we haven't done the solar. We're just actually in the process of bidding out to solar bidders. But yes, Kamar will be one of the incentives for solar, and we've just received our incentive estimates for solar, and it will for Vallejo, the project that I've shared with you. We have the incentives that we'll get will cover almost 99% of the cost of the solar panels. And that's structured in a way where 80% of the utility benefits will go to the tenants and 20% will come to the owner.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adalia, and thank you to everybody who's participating. These are fantastic questions, and really appreciate you guys speaking up, making time today. We have one more webinar in this series coming up, which is going to go deeper on construction management. So we talked about the tenant engagement. Part of this is emphasis. This is kind of the flip side of that coin almost. The two pieces are very much connected. So please join us June 19th, 10 to 11. And if you are interested in financing or any of the overall planning work, those were the topics of our first two webinars. And you can find those on our website, which is retrofit.la. And um, retrofit is a verb, right? So let's go do it. Thank you all. Thank you, Adalia. Fantastic presentation. It's really, again, great to hear you talk through this and to reflect back on the last few years of work and where we go from here. Thanks again.